found within the green is the calm before the storm. And no truer colors have been seen before as they run for cover in the liquor store. As they beg for more, I'm praying they might learn. If one thing's for sure, it's gotta be a better escape for me, escape for me. Another chance to prove it, I'll stand the rain again, the rain again. Can't you save this poison for another day, another day?
Hey guys, welcome to Surf and Show. I'm Noel Salas, and today's surfboard review is on the Ultra Joe by Channel Island Surfboards. Now I have two stock 5.3 boards. They're both 19.5 wide by 2.25 thick. Leaders comes in at 26.3, and I'm 5'9" and 160 pounds. Now both boards are in the Spinetek construction. We have one in Futures, and we have one in FCS2, and I had a blast on this board. Now we ran it through the paces in 1 to 5 foot plus surf. This is going to be a great review, so sit back, get your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Now the Ultra Joe is an updated version of the Average Joe. And from what I remember, the Average Joe was made for your average surfer, whether you were beginner, intermediate, or advanced, to have fun in small, mushy surf. And from what I remember back years ago when I had one, is it had a really round nose, it was wide in the midsection, it was a great paddler, it even had like a bump or hip on the tail, so they pulled the tail in so that way you could occasionally get a good turn in the pocket. Now, they've updated that to the Ultra Joe, and we're gonna look at the differences, and we're gonna talk about how it felt under my feet. So before we dive into the Ultra Joe, let's first establish a board category. I'm calling the Ultra Joe and other boards like it Grovelers. And for my height at 5'9" and 160 pounds, I see the manufacturers making Grovelers in the stock dimensions ranging from 5'0" all the way to 5'4". But one thing I notice about them all is they all have a hybrid nose. Now I want to talk about the small wave performance board category. That would be more or less the Rocket Wide or the Neckbeard 2. And those boards have that high performance shortboard outline, but they usually have less rocker, they're shorter, wider, and thicker than your typical high performance shortboard. Now the reason why I feel like we have to establish a category is because you guys want to make a purchase and you're always asking me to compare boards that you want to buy that fit in the same wave range, let's say 1 to 4 feet, and you want to compare the Ultra Joe to the Rocket Wide. And I would say that's not a good comparison. And this is why. The Rocket Wide fits in the small wave performance board category, and I feel like that you're going to get more performance out of that board by design from the manufacturer than you would get out of a Groveler. A better comparison would be the Ultra Joe versus the Pod Mod, or the High Five, or the Mini. Those are good comparisons, and I think we always have to compare apples to apples. So let's start with the outline. We'll start in the middle, working our way towards the nose. The wide point's from center, but it's subtle. It's not super obvious. And this is pretty typical for Grovelers, right? It's 5'3", I'm 5'9", 160 pounds, so they've got to put some foam in there to help me with paddling and to give me good stability under my front foot as I push for speed. The other thing to remember is that it's relatively low in entry rocker. The belly rocker is relatively flat because these boards are meant to go fast in 1 to 4 foot mushy waves. But the other thing I want to look at is the adjustment they made in the nose here. The Ultra Joe is a lot more pulled in compared to the Average Joe. And I really feel like that's super important because as I'm looking to transition quickly, I want the agility without having to worry about this catching up front. Let me give you a good example. Let's say we're racing down the line on a right and I want to do a roundhouse. Well, what happens to me is I'm generating all this speed, and when I'm generating that speed, my back foot comes forward so I can maximize that speed. And then when I go to hit the turn, from my bottom turn to go into the top turn to start the roundhouse, somewhere between the bottom turn and top turn, I go to move my foot back on the traction pad so I can get a nice precise turn and begin to start this figure eight coming off the top to the bottom to the rebound and the whitewash to start going again. And what I like about the Ultra Joe is it has that speed. I like it has a bit of a lower rail, so that way I can sink that rail real fast going at high speed. But because of the reduction in surface area here in the nose, this nose isn't catching. What I mean is it's not biting or bogging. A lot of the times on a board like the Average Joe, that wider nose is going to hinder me and slow me down in transition if my feet aren't placed perfectly on the board. Now I want to look at the outline from the middle of the board right here, and then we'll move our way back into the tail. But from right here, probably to the bump to about right here, this is 5.3. That's the rail line I need to do big carves or nice bottom turns. Now remember, I'm surfing 1 to 4 foot waves. That's what this board's designed for. So beyond that 4 foot, that's when these Grovelers struggle. But to my surprise, I pushed it over that 4 foot and I got great response off the bottom and in the top with something to push off of. And in some of the turns, I'm coming off that turn and it's driving me to the next turn. So the board actually caught me by surprise. Now, what can we attribute that to besides the straight rail line is we have to look at the tail design. Now this has a low to medium exit rocker, which will give me good traction because we know it has relatively flat belly rocker and flat entry rocker. So let's also look at the tail design by outline. It has a double bump squash tail. Now let's look at that. I talk about this all the time. A bump gives us something to pivot off of, right? And that's when the shaper by design is starting to say, okay, I want this board to have good traction or performance in the pocket. So we have something to pivot off of, and then you have a reduction in surface area from here to here. That means that we're pulling in the tail. It's becoming more narrow, right? And then there's another bump on the squash that even reduces it further. And one of the things I really liked about this board is if I could get my foot all the way back on the traction kick, I'm getting really precise turns. I got some great reverses where I was able to bury the nose and actually pivot around it, which is pretty unusual for me. And then even in some of the smaller surf or surfing with a quad, I felt like the tail was nice and loose. I had precision and performance in the pocket when I wanted to, but I also had the board was playful and allowed me to be creative, and it didn't matter what size the surf was. Now I want to talk a little bit about the rail, and we'll look at the foil. So the Average Joe had a fuller rail, right? Which made it good for stability, paddling, and getting speed. But when you want to hit a solid turn at a high speed, you need to be able to bury that rail real quick. And he really took it down here. And what I mean is it looks a little bit more like that, right? So I got a lot of speed, and that's how it felt. A lot of speed down the line. I had the confidence to hit the turn, even in bigger waves. This board had the traction I was looking for. Now, if we're gonna look at the foil moving back here towards the tail, it's nice and tapered too. I like my boards ultra sensitive, and even up here, it's not super bulky. Now look, all the time, people always say there's a theory that if you're gonna take your high performance shortboard and get a Groveler, add a leader or two. I don't particularly agree with that. What I wanna rely on is the board design from what the designer is creating. This board has low or flat belly rocker, right? With very low entry. What does rocker do? Rocker creates drag. But the opposite or the positive parts to that drag is it's gonna make it easy to turn under my front foot. So I want rocker on the belly of a board when it's appropriate to fit the curve of the wave. If I'm surfing 1 to 3 foot mushy waves and it's relatively flat, the designer matches that with a flat rocker in the belly. Why? We want less drag when we're paddling, and we want less drag when we're going down the line to generate that speed. And that's what I rely on. I rely on what the designer created. I'll run the leaders the same as my high performance shortboard, or even a little bit less. I want this 5.3 to be ultra responsive, so when I stand up and I start to go down the line, this board's like driving a sports car for me. I want this board to fit in transition quickly, and I want it to be agile, I want it to be nimble, and whatever I'm thinking, I want this board to do. And adding a leader or two is not going to do that for me. So another thing we have to attribute speed to, not just rocker, but also concaves. I want to recommend that you guys check out Britt Merrick talking about the concaves. He does a great job. I just want to talk about what it felt like under my feet. Concaves with this much surface area at 19.5 inches wide, it has that single. It's all about creating lift and getting this board to plane and skip across the top of the water. And then it goes into a double concave right in front of the fins here. And I like a double concave because it's still creating lift, and then we're directing water flow on how that water breaks out the right side and the left side to get it on rail easily. But as we move back in here to V, you can see it. It's substantial. That V, for me, when I have my foot all the way back and I want to hit a turn, especially at a high speed, I really felt like the board sat down nicely and I could put it on rail and hold it the entire time. Now I want to talk about the fins I chose in futures. Pretty simple. I went with a pivot fin from beginning to end, whether I ran it in thruster, quad, or a 2+1 setup. But the first place I started was the P8, which is a large pivot fin in the Legacy series in honeycomb construction. So middle of the ride number, it's balanced. I'm going to get true flex out of the fins to really feel the board out. And the reason I went with pivot fins is because the board has low belly rocker, it's wide, and I want to get it in the pocket as fast as I can. Now I liked it in the thruster setup, then I switched to a quad. I went to the HS1. This is also a large side fin with the Hayden shape medium quad rears. This actually falls almost like in a large category, so there's good hold and really good speed. These felt great together. And then from there I thought, shoot, I wonder how this board would go 2+1. Somebody on Instagram said that they'd tried it and they really liked it, so I tried it too. And I went with the Almeric twin. This is a really upright 2+1 setup. You can see even the +1 center fin has a little bit of fin depth, so I still kept the traction and I got the pivot that I wanted. And this board was next level fun. And it's funny as I pushed it in 4 to 6 foot surf with the 2+1 setup, and it's probably not the ideal place to test this. Maybe better in 1 to 2, 1 to 3 foot surf, maximize speed and keeping that tail loose and keeping it nice and fun. Now I want to talk about the fins I chose in FCS2. Right off the bat, I love this board as a quad, so I grabbed my favorite upright pivot fin, the Reactor, and I went with the large side fins in the Performance Core Carbon, and then I put in a medium quad rears. And because it's so upright, I felt like I was getting the pivot that I wanted, but what I really liked about the quad compared to the thruster is that with no center fin, I felt like the tail was a little bit more playful, the board had more flow, and I also felt like I was gaining speed in all my turns. Then I wanted to go 2+1, and this is the Almeric upright pivot set that I was talking about that I really like, even though I was surfing bigger waves. Now I believe this board will go good with any 2+1 set you have, and you guys will be pleasantly surprised at how versatile this board is with the different setups that you can put in it. So let's look at some waves in the 1 to 2 foot range. Nice speed. This is a quad. Right off the bottom, right into a top turn. Good flow right there. This is a thruster. Nice and playful, even in small waves with good speed. Lots of spray on that first turn, second turn, good spray. Every time you see me wearing the red wetsuit, I'm riding it as a thruster. Nice little reverse right there. Look at this little right, quick adjustment, blow the tail, having fun. So let's look at some waves in the 3 to 4 foot range. All these waves are on a thruster. Good flow, board's coming off the bottom, off the top without a glitch, but it just doesn't have that smoothness to it in transition from turn to turn. Watch what I'm talking about. Nice turn. Did you see it pivot around that center fin? Even in my projection floaters, I look tight. The board's not releasing as nice as a thruster compared to the way it moves as a quad. Nice little turn right there. That turn was good. The board still feels good. I'm just not surfing as smooth as normal. So let's look at some waves of me riding this board as a quad. Nice little floater right there. The wave really lines up. Quick speed snap. Another one. Just the board's projecting so well. Instead of the wave running away from me, I'm able to keep up with it. Not doing anything super trick, but the flow and projection and speed's incredible. I love this little right here. Get that vertical. Right into a wrap right there. The board's got good flow. Able to finish it real strong and staying in the pocket. This little left right here, I think this is where the first time I saw the quad just having so much more flow and being smoother in between turns. And then this one just going really fast and able to hit this kind of turn with confidence, knowing that it wasn't going to slide out on me. Now this little left, it's all about flow for me. Nothing super special on maneuvers, but watch this little wrap right here. Hit that, go down, right back into the pocket again, and the board's going rail to rail, real smooth. I had a really good time on this board. Now I want to talk about this board in the 2+1 setup. Came in, switched fins, a little bit bigger surf, and it kind of caught me by surprise. That wave's well overhead, off the bottom, off the top, really nice. Board's gaining speed through turns, it looks great. Little reverse right there, just keeping it fun and playful, but look at the rebound. Board's going so quick from turn to turn. I actually had a blast on this board as a quad and as a 2+1. You guys are gonna love it. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's review on the Ultra Joe. I had a blast, and this is a favorite for 2019, and I recommend it for that 1 to 4 foot wave range, and all skill levels from beginner to expert will have a blast on this board, whether you want to cruise or get performance in the pocket. Look, if you like the show, subscribe. You can also find us at surfandshow.com. Special shout out thanks to the folks at CI for sending these boards down for review. Until next time, we'll see you in the water. Bye-bye.
When dollars earn become a dollar spent, and the clouds outside take a turn for the worse. They lock the door, better run for the exit. And I found a way to see through the rain, and behind every storm there's a clearer day. If you're chained to the bottle, you're gonna miss the sun rays. Sure, there's gotta be a better escape for me, escape for me. Another chance to prove it, I'll stand the rain again, the rain again. Can't you save this poison for another day, another day? It's not my kind of scene. I'm all too sweet for your reality, but it stole your heart with its glamour before you turned 17. And could you do just one thing before I'm a memory? Take care of yourself and